Have your mornings felt different lately? Maybe a little heavier, more tiring, or just off in a way you can't explain? What if your body is trying to tell you something important, but it only speaks when the world is silent? There's something sacred about early mornings. It's when the noise of life fades, and for a brief moment, you can finally hear what's happening inside. But sometimes, those peaceful hours carry quiet warnings, subtle signals that most people overlook. Especially as they age, we blame fatigue on getting older, blame weight changes on stress, or chalk up breathlessness to just having a bad day. But what if these little changes are not random? What if your body is gently raising a red flag long before anything shows up in a blood test? In this video, we'll explore 4 surprising signs that appear in the early hours of your day, clues that, if caught in time, could help you detect something as serious as cancer before it takes root. This is not a video about fear. It's about paying attention, staying strong, and honoring the quiet intelligence of your body, because even in stillness, your health is speaking. Let's learn how to listen. Sometimes, the day hasn't even begun, and yet, your body already feels like it's carrying more than it should. There's something incredibly honest about how we feel in the morning, before the coffee, before the news, before the distractions of the day set in. Our bodies speak more clearly. They haven't yet been masked by willpower or motion. What you feel when you first open your eyes, that weight in your chest, the ache in your limbs, the strange fog behind your forehead, is often the rawest signal your body can send. And sometimes, it's not just sleepiness. Maybe you've noticed it. You used to swing your legs off the bed and walk straight to the window, stretch a little, start your day. But now, you find yourself pausing, not because you're in pain exactly, but because everything feels heavy, heavier than it should. Some call it aging. And yes, age brings change. Muscles take longer to warm up. Sleep isn't as deep as it once was, but there's a particular kind of exhaustion, the kind that clings to you, that isn't solved by an extra hour in bed. It's not about being tired. It's about being depleted. This isn't about panic. It's about presence. Let me tell you about someone who once thought the same thing you might be thinking now. Walter, a 68-year-old retired firefighter from Colorado, had spent decades pushing through everything: smoke, storms, 24-hour shifts. He was built tough, so when he started feeling drained every morning, he did what many of us do. He powered through, a little heavier, a little slower, but still moving, until one morning, he sat on the edge of his bed for a full hour, not because he was in pain, not because he was dizzy, but because something in him said, "Not yet. I'm not ready." His daughter noticed, and with a gentle nudge, she convinced him to visit his doctor. A few tests later, they found the early markers of lymphoma. It hadn't spread. Treatment began immediately. Today, Walter walks his grandkids to school 3 days a week. He later said something that stuck with me. "It wasn't the fatigue that scared me. It was how normal I thought it was." That line hits deep because for so many of us, especially as we grow older, we normalize discomfort. We write it off. We say, "It's just age," or "I'm just slowing down." But what if slowing down is actually your body pulling the emergency brake? What if the heaviness isn't a burden, but a message? And here's the truth. You are allowed to check. You are allowed to wonder. You are allowed to say, "Something doesn't feel quite right." That's not weakness. That's wisdom. If you wake up and feel like gravity has tripled, if mornings leave you more drained than restored, pay attention, especially if this feeling lingers beyond a few days, or is paired with changes like dizziness, brain fog, or weight shifts. These might be early signs of something your body is trying to fight quietly. Don't wait for it to shout. Listen while it still whispers, because you deserve to wake up and feel alive, not perfect, not young, but present, clear, and in tune with the life that still wants to flow through you. And if something feels off, Asking questions might be the most loving thing you do. For yourself. And for the people who still need you here and then. There are mornings when the first breath you take feels different. Lighter. Tighter. Or somehow just not yours before the world begins to move. Before coffee brews. Or sunlight warms the curtains. There's a moment, quiet and undisturbed, when your body gently returns from rest. That first breath you take upon waking, it should feel full, easy, effortless, like the soft opening of a new day. But what happens when it doesn't? What happens when that breath feels tight, shallow, strained? It's easy to dismiss. Maybe the room was too warm. Maybe you slept funny. Maybe it's just age. But let's pause for a moment, because that breath, the one you take before you even sit up, could be telling you something. Clara, a 70-year-old piano teacher from Oregon, was always mindful of her body. She'd never smoked. She walked every day. She believed in deep breathing and gentle stretching, so when she began waking up feeling winded before even moving, she assumed it was stress, or the weight of the times. It wasn't until one morning, while brushing her hair, that she had to stop and sit down. Her heart wasn't racing, but her breath felt absent. Not gone, but distant, like trying to draw air through a straw. It was subtle, but it was there. Her doctor listened, really listened. A few tests later, revealed a small, early-stage mass pressing near her diaphragm, operable, treatable, and found just in time. Clara said later, "I used to think breathing was just automatic, something you never question. Now, every deep breath feels like a gift I forgot to unwrap." Her story reminds us of something simple, yet profound. Breath is life's quiet companion, and when it shifts, we should listen. After COVID-19, we've all become a little more aware of our lungs. We've learned that breathing isn't just a reflex, it's a reflection of our health, resilience, and presence. The pandemic taught us that shallow breaths, tight chests, and morning breathlessness can no longer be ignored. They're not always panic attacks or poor sleep posture. Sometimes they're the very first signs of something stirring beneath the surface, like inflammation, fluid, or obstruction in the chest cavity. Why the morning? Because the morning is the body's truth teller. It's the time when we haven't yet distracted ourselves, moved around, or masked symptoms. During sleep, our breathing slows, our muscles rest, and if something is off in our lungs or diaphragm, the first place it will show is when we try to wake up. So if you're waking up and your breath feels shorter than it should, if your chest feels tight before you even sit up, don't panic, but don't dismiss it either. You're not being dramatic, you're being wise. This isn't about fear. It's about partnership with your body, with your breath, with your well-being. Take a moment tomorrow morning. Place your hand gently over your chest and notice your breath. Is it smooth? Is it full? Or does it feel like you're borrowing air, not owning it? Because here's the truth. You deserve to breathe deeply, not just during meditation or yoga, but every morning, every single day. And if one day that breath feels different, pay attention. Not out of fear, but out of self-respect, because your body is not your enemy. It's your oldest friend, and sometimes speaks in whispers. Let's learn to listen before it needs to shout. But sometimes it's not your whole body that struggles. It's just one part that refuses to greet the morning. For those who stay active in their later years, who walk the dog each morning, garden with care, or play piano as the sun rises, there's a quiet pride that comes with movement. Your body, after all these years, still answers when you ask it to rise, stretch, and begin. But what happens when one part of you doesn't rise with the rest? Not the whole body, just one shoulder, one hip, one hand that refuses to cooperate the way it used to. That was the case with John, a 73-year-old jazz pianist from New Orleans. His fingers had danced over ivory keys for more than 5 decades. Every morning, like clockwork, he'd make coffee, hum a tune, and let his hands play whatever came to heart, until one day, They didn't. Started slowly. His right shoulder felt stiff when he reached for his coffee cup. The next week, it wouldn't lift his arm without tension. Then, the music stopped. He couldn't raise his arm enough to play a chord until well after noon. He assumed it was arthritis, just the wear and tear of age, but something felt off. It wasn't the usual ache. It didn't ease with warm water or gentle stretching. It felt stubborn, localized, like one part of him was refusing to wake up. His doctor ordered a scan, and there it was, a small tumor pressing on a nerve near his upper chest. It hadn't spread. It was treatable, and because he caught it early. John is back at the piano, not just playing, but playing with gratitude. He said something beautiful. When you play music, your body speaks before your hands do. My shoulder was trying to sing a warning. I just didn't know the tune. His story holds a lesson for all of us. When we know our bodies well, we also know when something isn't quite right. And here's the truth. Not all stiffness is arthritis, especially when it's focused in one area, especially when it doesn't go away, especially when it shows up first thing in the morning, before you've done anything to strain yourself. Localized morning stiffness can be your immune system reacting to something nearby. It might be inflammation around a tumor, or pressure on a nerve, or a disruption in the way your body usually moves in harmony. It's not always serious, but it's always worth noticing. And if you're someone who still moves freely, still takes pride in stretching, walking, lifting, or playing, then you know what your body should feel like. And when it doesn't, it's not overthinking, it's self-respect. You're not fragile, you're aware, you're not dramatic, you're in tune. So if one part of you refuses to join the rest of you in the morning, if a shoulder won't lift, a knee won't bend, or a wrist won't rotate like it used to, don't panic. But don't ignore it either. It may not be arthritis. It may be your body sending a gentle nudge, asking you to listen more closely, because you've spent a lifetime moving forward, and you still have music left to play. And sometimes, the first clue that something deeper is happening begins not with pain, but with a reflection that feels unfamiliar. We often celebrate weight loss. A friend might say, "You look great." The mirror seems a little more forgiving. Your jeans fit better. Your belt needs a tighter notch. And at first, feels like a quiet accomplishment. But what if that weight loss comes without trying? No changes in your diet, no new exercise routine, no intention to slim down, and yet, the numbers on the scale are dropping. That's not a victory, that's a question. Eleanor, a 75-year-old retired librarian, used to laugh with her son that she was finally back to her college weight. She made jokes about it, brushing off the concern, but deep down, she knew something didn't feel right. She hadn't changed anything. She was still eating normally, still living as she always had, and yet, over the course of a few weeks, she had quietly lost 12 pounds. It wasn't dramatic, it was subtle, enough to wonder, enough to worry. Eventually, she made a doctor's appointment. Tests revealed early signs of digestive cancer. It hadn't spread because she listened to her body when the signs were still soft. She was able to start treatment early, and today, Eleanor is not only recovering, she's thriving. She later shared, "I thought weight loss meant I was doing something right. Turns out, my body was trying to tell me something was wrong." Her story is not uncommon. Many older adults experience unintentional weight loss and chalk it up to aging or to simply eating a little less. But the truth is, after 60, your weight should remain relatively stable unless you intentionally work to change it. When it starts to fall without reason, it may be more than metabolism. It may be a sign your body is burning energy in a way it shouldn't be. It could mean your digestive system isn't absorbing nutrients. It could mean there's internal inflammation, or even an early-stage illness quietly changing how your body uses fuel. What makes the morning so important in recognizing this is the moment of honesty before meals, before distractions, before the day takes over. You meet yourself as you are. It's in the looseness of your clothing, the hollow of your cheeks, The way your ring slips off your finger more easily than it used to. These aren't vain observations. They're signals. They're messages from a body that has carried you for decades and is still trying to keep you safe. This isn't about panic. It's about paying attention. It's about noticing when something shifts, gently, quietly, without your permission, and it's about choosing to listen. If you see signs of weight loss that you didn't plan, don't ignore them. Don't wave them away. Get them checked. Just as you would a cough that won't go away, or a pain that lingers because your body isn't failing you, speaking to you, and sometimes doesn't shout, sometimes speaks in absence, in the loss of weight, of energy, of balance. But even that absence is a kind of presence. It's your body's way of asking for your attention, not your fear. So if one morning you look in the mirror and see a thinner version of yourself looking back, and you didn't ask for that change, take a moment, breathe, and ask the most important question. Is my body trying to tell me something? Then, with courage and care, find the answer. And sometimes, the smallest signals, felt in the quiet of morning, carry the greatest meaning. If we choose to listen, each story we've shared began with something small, a quiet heaviness, a breath that didn't feel quite right, a shoulder that wouldn't move, a reflection that looked unfamiliar. None of them shouted, none of them begged for attention, but each was a whisper, soft, subtle, and deeply important. What these stories remind us is this: your body is not just aging, speaking, and those early morning moments before the noise, before the distractions, are when it speaks the loudest. Walter listened, Clara paid attention, John paused, Eleanor asked a question, and because they did, they're still here, living, breathing, and being with the people they love. So tomorrow morning, when the light hits your face, and the day hasn't yet begun, take a moment, listen, not out of fear, but out of love, because your body isn't giving up on you. It's giving you one more chance to care. And if any part of this spoke to you, just one small part, then maybe it's time to pass it on. These 4 morning signs may seem quiet, but they're often the body's silent warnings. If this message touched something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone you love. And if you'd like more stories that help you feel seen, heard, and understood, subscribe. Stay with us and keep listening, because your story, too, deserves to be cared for.